أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So we've heard many talks today, very, very moving, inspirational talks. In one of those talks, there was a mention about an analogy, and that is the analogy of the bird. And the Sheikh mentioned that this bird, in order to fly properly, has to have two wings. And he mentioned that those two wings are sabr and shukr. Inshallah, today, I'm going to talk about the second wing, which is shukr. But in this talk, I want to approach it from a different perspective. I want to go to an ayah in the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about an announcement that has been made. And this announcement was made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and said by Musa alayhi salam. But before I tell you what that announcement is, I want to give you some context. And I think that this context will be even more timely now. Musa alayhi salam is speaking to a people whose children have been massacred. He is speaking to a people who are dealing with a pharaoh who has made it a policy to murder baby boys. And he is speaking to that group of people, Bani Israel, when he makes this proclamation. Now, keeping that in mind, I want you to listen carefully to what he proclaims from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the proclamation of Allah. And I want you to remember who is being spoken to. These are people who are being traumatized. These are people who are being slaughtered. These are people who are in it. These are not people who are having an easy life. These are people who've been enslaved and their children murdered. And I think we can understand a little bit about what that might look like because of what we're dealing with now and what we're witnessing now in Gaza. And what does he say in this proclamation? وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Now this is very interesting because this proclamation is وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ, the first part. And if your Lord proclaims, so Allah is proclaiming. And understand that there is a lot of grammar here which puts emphasis upon emphasis about what is being told, what is being said. I can say something to you, but that's different than me proclaiming something. Now, what is the proclamation? وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. That's the proclamation. That if you are grateful, and this is a conditional statement, right? There's an if statement here. If then, if you are grateful, and now there is another emphasis with the lam, la azidannakum. If you are grateful, then surely, for sure, I will increase you. And that is the statement. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember who is he speaking to. Now you would think that if you're speaking to a people who are being slaughtered, who are being oppressed, who are being enslaved, that your message would be a message of patience. You would think that you would be reminding these people to have sabr, right? That you would be reminding them to persevere. And yet, the proclamation is about gratitude. It isn't even about sabr. And now this is very profound, and I'll get to why. But the proclamation is a divine principle, and that is, if you are grateful, Allah will increase you. Now, if you study psychology, and I'll talk about psychology for a second. If you study psychology, especially modern positive psychology, there is a big emphasis now on well-being and the study of happiness. And they've moved away from abnormal psychology, figuring out how the human being can break down and figuring out how to fix it. And now there's a lot more emphasis on increasing well-being and happiness. And what they found is very fascinating when you look at all these studies. What they find is that everyone wants to be happy, and yet they found that people pretty much live on this sort of baseline happiness. It's a set point. And that when really exciting things happen in your life, you have a peak, but you pretty much go back to baseline. And similarly, when something difficult happens in your life, you have this, this low, but you pretty much come back to baseline. And this baseline is not so easy to change. But they found that there are two reliable ways to increase the baseline. And what are those two reliable ways? Number one, service to others. That in the service of others, you can actually increase your own baseline happiness. Something that you can't do by winning the lottery. Something that you can't do by getting a promotion. Those are temporary spikes. But service actually increases the baseline. They found something else that reliably increases the baseline, and that is the practice of gratitude. Gratitude is so powerful, they find, that keeping a gratitude journal, just writing down 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for every single day, has been found to even help with symptoms of depression. So gratitude, we've found today in psychological studies, increases you in happiness and actually helps you with depression. Now let's go back to the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are grateful, I will increase you. Now I want to come back to the context of who's being spoken to. Again, these are people who are going through tragedy, people who are being slaughtered, people who are being oppressed. What does that have to do with patience? They're not being told, be patient. They're being told, if you are grateful, I will increase you. There's a very powerful principle, and it goes like this. Whatever you focus on grows. I want you to remember that. Whatever you focus on grows. What this means is, if you are the type of person who always focuses on problems, your problems are going to look bigger and bigger. They will in fact surround you and you will feel paralyzed and handicapped by them. If you are the type of person who looks at your life and will gloss over all the good things in your life and all the things that you have to be grateful for, and then you'll zero in on that one thing that's missing, you will always feel poor. Because that one thing that's missing will grow in your eyes. What you focus on grows. There was this meme a long time ago I saw, it always stuck in my mind. It was a picture of a little boy, and he was holding one slice of cake. So he was very happy, as children are, holding cake. And then there was another picture in contrast just below of another boy holding an entire cake with one slice missing. And so he was sad. Now you tell me who has more cake? The one who's sad. Why is he sad and the other is happy? And the answer is very simple. It is because the one on the top is focused on what he has. And so he is happy. Happiness follows from gratitude. The one on the bottom actually has 13 slices of cake. Not one, 13. But he is sad. Why? Because he's focused on what's missing. He is looking at the missing slice, and so he's sad. He's not looking at the 13 slices, he's looking at the one that's missing. And so in our lives, if we are this type of person, who, you'll look at everything in your life and you'll be like, but where's the missing one? Where's the problem? The parent who wants 1,000 things from their child, and that child has done 999 of the 1,000. But what does the parent focus on? That 1 out of 1,000. And that becomes all that parent reminds, remembers, repeats, criticizes, complains. And this is very dangerous, because this principle, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِنْ شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, this principle, it applies to everything. It applies to relationships. If you want to motivate a person, and now I'm speaking to all you who are married, if you want to motivate your spouse, if you want to motivate your children, what do you find is the way to motivate them? Is it by bringing up the 1 out of 1,000 thing they didn't do or didn't do as you want? No. It's by bringing up what you're grateful for. It's by showing appreciation. And you'll find that even in relationships, the more you show appreciation for something, the more you get of it. You want to see more goodness? Appreciate the good you already have. Now I want to go back to these people who are being slaughtered. How can gratitude become a tool of patience? And the answer is, patience follows directly from gratitude. That actually, patience is a byproduct of gratitude. Why? I'll give you an example. How many of you have children? Young children. So imagine, it's Eid, and you take your child to an amusement park. You know what? They've been partying all day. First you went out to breakfast, and then you got them a present, and then you took them, they got candy, and they're literally having nonstop sugar all day, right? And it's one present after another treat, after another outing. And then at the end of the day, one thing goes wrong, or they don't get their way. And what happens? It's the end of the world. What do you say to that child to make them patient over that one thing that didn't go their way? But look at what you did all day. You got presents, you played, and what do? You remind them of the blessings. Because when you remember the blessings, it's a lot easier to be patient. I want to remind you, brothers and sisters, that our life is not peaks and valleys. This is an idea that a lot of us have, right? We go through good times in our life and we're like, you know what? I feel like I'm on the top of the mountain right now. And then we go through difficult times and we might be like, I'm in a really low place. But the reality is that life is not all good or all bad. In fact, one writer said that life is like a railroad track. So you can think about life as peaks and valleys, but that's not very accurate. Because when things are going well and you feel like you're at the top of the mountain, but is it perfect? That time that you felt like things were good, but was it Jannah? Was there anything that went wrong? And the answer is, of course. Similarly, when things are hard, you may have had a difficulty with your health, or with your wealth, or with your family, but didn't you also have blessings at the same time? And so the reality of life, more accurately described than peaks and valleys, is a railroad track. Railroad tracks have two parallel tracks. and they're always right next to each other. In our lives, on the one hand, you'll have hard times, but at the same time, parallel, you have blessings. Your tests are alongside your blessings, and your blessings are always alongside your tests. We have to change the way we see our lives, because many of us, we become hyper-focused on everything that's hard, on everything we don't like. When we have a challenge, we become fixated on the challenge and we don't see anything else. And remember, whatever you focus on grows. And so if we can learn to widen the lens, and instead of zeroing in on the hard things, turn and shift your focus to the good things. Turn and shift your focus to the blessings, because guess what? They are always, always there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, listen carefully. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna ma'al usri yusra. Inna ma'al usri yusra. Allah says with, and the word here I want to emphasize is ma'a. Allah says that indeed with the hardship comes ease. Railroad track. For every difficult time that you go through, for every deprivation, for every loss, for every challenge, Allah is simultaneously giving you blessings all the time. Your blessings never stop, even when you're going through hardships. And I want you to shift your focus, because if you shift your focus, you change your life. Allah is saying to a people whose children are being slaughtered that if they are grateful, Allah will increase them. Because gratitude becomes that ingredient necessary for patience. If you focus on what you have, it grows. Inna ma'al usri yusra. And so at every given moment, and I want you to think about this, at every given moment, you have both the hardship with the ease. They are together. This is a divine principle. None of us are in Jahannam, wa a'udhu billah. Only Jahannam has no ease. And we ask Allah for protection from that. We are in a world where always with the hardship is ease. The question is, which one do you focus on? And wherever your focus goes, that's what grows. You choose that. I'm going to end with a personal story. And some of you might have heard this before. It's something that really, really shook me in my own personal life. And that was, I met a woman more than 10 years ago who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested her very severely, where she had a daughter. And around the time her daughter was 3 years old, she stopped speaking. And it was strange. The school called her up and said, your daughter she's not talking. We don't know what's wrong. So she took her daughter to the doctor and they ran some tests, and finally they realized that she had a rare genetic disorder called MPS. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with MPS, this is a disorder where the doctor is telling this mother, your child, who is now 3 years old, will slowly lose all her facts. Second daughter, who was tested, and she also had MPS. And then she had a third daughter, and she was tested, and she also had MPS. And I kid you not, there are people in the world with one child who has MPS, but I do not think there was anyone given 3. And that was my friend. And then she had a 4th child with severe autism. Now, why do I tell you her story? And I do want to tell you that I have witnessed this woman, and I have visited her in her home years ago when all of her children were alive. And I saw the way they lived. Her house was like a hospital, and she was like a 24-hour nurse. When I say she didn't sleep, I'm not exaggerating. She did not sleep. And day and night she cared for her children, because they got to a point where they could not even swallow their own saliva, so they were choking on it. 3 children, all on machines. And she watched every one of them lose all their faculties until they died. Allah yarhamhum, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reunite them with no sickness. But why do I tell you this story? The reason I tell you this story is, I met her in the midst of all of this, and do you know what she said to me? She said to me, I am, quote, drowning in gratitude, end quote. That's what she said. I'm a witness. She has been given a trial we can't even conceive of, and she says, I am drowning in gratitude. How does someone do that? That is the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Gratitude in the midst of her calamity is actually what allowed her to not just survive. I kid you not, this woman was always smiling. She was genuinely grateful despite the tsunami of tests that she was given. And I'll end with this, because gratitude completely transforms your vision. It completely transforms how you view your life. It completely transforms you. But I'll tell you this, and I'll end with this. When they got the diagnosis, her husband said that he would look at his daughters and he said, I feel like I'm looking at 3 graves. And then my friend, the mother, she said, I look at my daughters and I feel like I'm looking at 3 doors to Jannah. How can you have that type of vision with this type of trial? This is not a prophet. This is not the mother of a prophet. This is a regular woman who lives in New Jersey. How do you have that type of vision? And the answer is, I am drowning in gratitude. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows all of us to change our lens, allows us to see the blessings that Allah is literally pouring on us every single moment, and to shift our focus from being ungrateful. Because ingratitude, actually, it punishes us. We are not just punished for ingratitude, we are punished by ingratitude. Shift our focus and see the blessings, and they will grow. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم. سبحانك الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا